Most brokers, they try to impress with answers, but the great brokers, they built trust through asking the right questions. So in today's episode, I'm going to break down 7 questions I teach in my sales frameworks that instantly transform you from being an order taker to a trusted advisor. Let's dive into it. The very first question is, what's your biggest concern right now? This cuts through surface chat and gets to what really matters. It shows you care about them and not just the transaction. The mistake people make with this is that they just dive straight in. They become this order taker and they just go, okay, let me help you with what you want to do, which we think is the mortgage. We instantly think mortgage is what they need help with, whereas actually their biggest concern could be something very trivial that you haven't touched on. This is really common. The biggest concern might be that they're worried about a payment they missed in uni and they're now in their late 30s and still absolutely terrified. When you ask this question of what's your biggest concern, it's going to also bring up what is important to them right now and allows you to hopefully address that concern so they can start to see you as the person they want to do business with. It's a really simple trick. And when I work with clients, this is one of the first things we look at in the discovery call, asking these types of questions. Super simple, but if you don't address their biggest concern, you could be brilliant, but they could leave going, do you know what? I still am worried about X. And then if another advisor comes in and answers, doesn't do any of the stuff you do, but answers that question right, then they could beat you for sure. Second question is, how would you like this process to feel? This shifts the dynamic. You're not just solving, you're now designing an experience. So most clients never get asked this, and that's going to be your edge. It's emotion versus logic. People think that we make logical decisions, but we make emotional decisions. And buying a house, by the way, is an incredibly oftentimes emotionally driven thing, unless obviously you're in buy-to-let, which is a different niche, obviously. But if you're in a purchase for resi, then it's all about emotions. Shifting our job as a broker, which is all very numbers orientated, results orientated, and actually moving more towards emotional intelligence, empathy, and kind of create an experience for the client, that actually helps you significantly for a number of reasons. One reason is it creates a raving fan client, they like you more, but it also creates a bit of a cover for if you make any mistakes. People will forgive mistakes if they enjoy and feel like the process is being handled correctly. If they're judging you on accuracy, the mistakes get much more scrutiny. And that's where complaints can be a problem. And we all know that one advisor, it could even be you, that we know they're pretty chaotic. They don't get anything really done in regards to their admin's terrible, all that stuff, but they're very charismatic and they're very good at helping people feel heard. Because of that, they get away with so much more. Not uncompliant in regards to anything dodgy, just that their mistakes get swept under the rug much easier and less noticeable. This is really important when you start tapping into emotions with a client and creating experience for them. It actually protects your business in the long run. Number 3 we have is, what made you reach out now? Timing reveals the urgency, and this helps you identify pain, intent, motivation instantly. Why are they getting in touch? What is the reason for them to be speaking to you right now? Very important to establish this straight away at the beginning. Even if you've got this on some form of booking link like Calendly or a Go High Level link, even if you've got that, you still want to be saying to people like, tell me more about that. Tell me why you're reaching out. But understanding their motivation is crucial. If you're talking to them and you don't realize what made them reach out right now was that they're just thinking about it because they might be doing it in a year or two, then you don't want to waste your time on that. It is a waste of time. It's a very controversial decision with this. And people say, oh no, a client in the future, like the client couldn't be right now, but it could be in the future. Yes, they could. But a good nurture sequence should drop them back into a nurture pool that allows them to be a client later on, not wasting your time talking to that client now. Understanding what made them reach out for that perspective is great because it can funnel it out and you can see, okay, what were the trigger points on that? Other things you can do is understanding where they came from. So what, again, their motivations, it instantly shows their motivation, their pain. If it's like, what made you reach out right now? I'm getting divorced. Instantly, you know how you should be dealing with that client. There's an established point where you're like, okay, this is one of their main issues, one of the things we need to focus on. So understanding what made them reach out, that biggest motivator, huge. Again, ask these questions at the beginning of your discovery call is what I'd recommend. Number 4 is, what's your plan if we don't go ahead? Now, this question builds authority and it highlights risk. So it makes them realize the cost of inaction without any hard selling. I think we should do more of these types of questions. What you're doing here is you're addressing it's a kind of reverse psychology. You're addressing what happens if we don't go, as opposed to if we do. What's really good with this is, instead of you saying this is what could happen, you're actually asking them to visualize what would happen and to explain what would happen, which puts them in the situation and makes them feel significantly more ownership over that situation. Now, what would plan if you don't go ahead is they might say, oh, well, we'll stay put, They might even say, and you can use this one in this case of saying, that's not really an option, we have to go ahead. And then you can even go further with that one. If we go ahead, what would happen if we didn't go ahead? What would be your choices? Where else would you go? You can get deeper on it and ask them more probing questions. I would be the type of person that you want to use. And if you don't want to use me, who else would you use? So you start getting them to think of alternatives. This sounds strange, but actually what it does is if you're good and you know you're good and you're the best in your space, which should be the ultimate goal, is you're trying to be the best person in your area, in your niche, that you're the number one competitor that everybody looks at and goes, oh my gosh. When you ask them to start to compare their options, that's a powerful tool for you where they're going to go, everybody else kind of looks a bit rubbish in comparison. I love to do this one myself. It's a good sales tactic. It's just about confidence and knowing where you sit in the marketplace. Very good question at opening up a client and getting them to see what their actions or inactions would entail. Number 5 is, what would make this a success in your eyes? Define value on their terms. That's how you anchor expectations and show you're listening. Don't say what you think is a success, establish what they think is a success. Then you know what you're working towards. So if you know that the things they're looking for, X, Y, and Z, and you know your service as a mortgage advisor does that because you've built your client journey correctly and you know what all the milestones are going to go through, you're going to go, okay, cool, we'll make sure that that's all covered for you. Not it's all in the service. You go, I'll make sure that's covered for you. You're making it very personal to them. But what this does is allows you to know the goal. Oftentimes, when we're speaking to clients, we will actually spend most of our time trying to figure out what they want instead of just asking them. I have this happen to me all the time, where I used to be a sucker for this, where I try and guess what's going on. What do you think? And actually, it was only when I started asking and saying, hey, look, do you have a problem with this? Is this an issue? What would you class as wrong? What do you think is acceptable? What do you think is not acceptable? That I started realizing, wait a minute, it's much easier to do that, significantly easier. So do hard questions that most advisors will not be willing to ask. You want to be that person who does. Number 6 is, have you worked with a broker before? So this is gold for context. You'll uncover hidden resistance, past experiences, and preferences before they become objections. Identifying who they've spoken to first is really important. Some people will talk about this and they'll say, you don't want to know who they spoke to, you just want to plow on, it's about your job. No, I don't think that's the case at all. A lot of the times, what you want to uncover who they've spoken to, validate the decisions they've made to speak to that person, or just don't say anything. If they say, I've spoken to John Smith, I might go, oh, okay, they're really good. I know them very well. They're really nice. If I know them. It's the same in what I do as a coach. If they spoke to Joe Smith, I don't know, there's lots of Smiths. Let's just say I've spoken to this other person. If I don't rate them, I'll never say I don't rate them. If I don't think they're any good, or I think that they're probably not a good fit, what I'll say is I'll go, oh, that's interesting. And then they'll say, well, what do you mean interesting? And at that point you go, look, I don't really have a comment on other competitors and I don't really fully understand the business model. So it's not really something I want to get involved in. Now, what's really powerful with this is if they've spoken to a number of people, if you've commented on one and said you like them, and then commented on another going, I don't really have a comment on them, it already says what you think of them without you having to say anything. A bit of a cheeky persuasion tactic there, but it's huge. You don't have to ever badmouth your competitors because your body language and what you don't say will say it all. And that's something that we want to use as advisors when you have lots of competitors out there. If they've spoken to London and Country, oh, really? That's interesting. How did you find that? Anyway, let's move on. Now, one thing you can do with this specific one is if they say who the people they've gone through, one of the things that I love to do is I tell my advisors to say this. So you're speaking to me now. What is it about those that you didn't like that prompted you to still speak to me? Let's address the elephant in the room. If you liked them, you would have picked them. So speak to people, that's fine. So what is it about those you didn't like that still made you continue to speak to me? And if they go, oh, well, I just want to shop around, you go, that's fine. But we are all brokers and we are worked in a regulated market. So it can't be like you think we're going to get a better deal or anything like that because we all have access to the same deals. So what is it about them? Because realistically, you've got to choose a broker by what you like about them. And that means they don't like some of those people yet. Now, you get the odd one or two people who will shop around, but not many. Most people are just looking for something they like. And once you pull that bullet out of the gun and say, look, I love that one, which is this idea that people think that there's some sort of exclusive deals and rates. The best way to change that is be like, look, everybody has access to the same lenders. We're fully regulated within reason. If you go to a broker who's representative for the whole market, they're going to have access to pretty much everybody. If you go to people who are not that, I wouldn't do that. That's instantly limiting your choices. So what do? We're removing Connells and all those other panel people straight away. When it comes to a fee, truthfully, don't make your decision based on a fee. It's nominal in comparison to everything else. Most mortgage brokers who are any good are going to charge around £500 to £600, really. So whatever you're looking at within that, you can go in that range between 500 and 600. If they're a little bit less, I'd probably wonder why. If they're a little bit more, then okay, fine as well. But they're going to be within that range. So the only real decision you need to make is, who do you like? Because that's the main one. And that's how you can overcome any objection if they've spoken to people. You've just gone, tell me who you like. You obviously don't like them because you're still talking to me. It's little sneaky stuff to do. Number 7 is, what would make this feel like a great decision 6 months from now? This reframes interaction from transactional to transformational. So you're planting seeds for long-term value, not short-term gain. I think this one should be used way more in our conversations as brokers than we do. Way, way more. Because what would make this feel like a great decision 6 months from now is, I'm sat in my brand new home, loving my life in my new house. Which, by the way, might seem like a stupid question. And then you say to them, they say that and you go, well, that's what I don't. And you go, yeah, exactly. That's what I want for you. So what you're doing is affirming what they want. I love this question so much because you are projecting to the future of where you can go together with them. Not just, oh, we'll get a mortgage and I'll get it to offer. You're ending with this point of, where does this end? What are we trying to create? We're trying to create something that spans 6 months in our projection. What does that feel like to you? What would good look like? And when they're telling you that, you're getting all this information. But guess what? You can use all this stuff later on, especially if you're getting it recorded on something like Fathom. You can use it later on and say, look, you said this, this is what we've done. You can play back their own words to them. Super powerful. You see, better questions will equal faster trust, and that will equal more conversions, which is ultimately the thing that we want to do as mortgage advisors. Now, if you want to learn how you can increase your sales, check out this deep dive video on the screen right now, which is all the stuff you can do to improve your sales and conversions as a mortgage broker outside of just asking these questions. Give it a click.